Hi guys, welcome to our first lesson in geometry. We're going to be doing things a little bit differently with our videos. After each example, you'll be doing a check your understanding or a check your progress question. And then you'll be entering your answers online. And then right after that, the next part of the video will show you the answer. And if you get it correct, feel free to skip to the next example. If you get it wrong, it's probably a really good idea to see the explanation of how to arrive at the correct answer for the check your understanding, check your progress questions though. Okay. Because geometry has a lot of different terms, we'll probably be going through a lot of terms. I'll be showing you parts of the book. However, I do suggest that as you're doing the video that you're kind of following along in order of the book. The example questions go in order, but just also so that way you can fill in your vocab that you see from your geometry book. So let's get started with today's lesson on points, lines, and planes. Okay. So originally I was going to write out the definitions and things, but just to show you kind of how we're going to go according to the book, right? So it might help that as you follow along, you start with your first couple of terms that you have to define, right? So the first one is undefined terms here. And what it is terms that can only be explained using examples and descriptions, okay? And so here in geometry, point, line, and plane are examples of these undefined terms, okay? Okay. A point is simply a location, okay? A line is made up of these points. It has no thickness or width. And whenever we have points that are on the same line, we call it collinear. Kind of like with, linear line, so with each other on the line, right? A plane, not like an airplane, but a geometry plane, is a flat surface made up of points, okay? And then when points are on the same plane, they are known as coplanar, right? Or with each other on the plane, okay? It has no depth and it actually extends infinitely in all directions, okay? And then we use our points to name our lines and planes. Here are some descriptions of how we draw them and how we name them. Okay. So a point is represented by a dot. We name it using a capital letter. Okay. We consider it as having neither shape nor size, and when we write it out, we write out the word point and then which letter it is. I've also seen people abbreviate it as PT dot and then the name. That is fine as well. Okay. A line, you should know what a line is. However, in geometry, to indicate the difference between a line and a line segment, a line should have two arrows at the end. Right? So that's what it's shown as with an arrowhead at each end. Okay. We name it either by 2 points on the line, right? So this would be named line AB because of the 2 points AB, or we can do BA. The order doesn't matter. Or by a lowercase script letter, or kind of like a cursive letter here. So this could also be line N. But note here that N is not a point on the line. Okay, and so here are some of the descriptions for it. The shortcut, if you don't want to write the word line, is to draw the symbol of a line, which is kind of like a mini line above the name. Okay. And then the last one here is a plane. We draw it as kind of a slanted four-sided figure to make it kind of look a little bit more 3D. Think of it as a sheet of paper. A sheet of paper is an example of a plane. Right? How we name it is either by a capital script or cursive letter. Right? So example here, this would be called plane T. Note the cursive T. Or we name it by three non-collinear points. So 3 points that are on the plane but aren't on the same line with each other, right? And the order doesn't matter, which is why you can see here that it's like X, Y, Z, X, Z, Y, Y, X, Z, etc., etc. Okay? Okay. So let's get started with our first example. So you should see that after the parts that I showed, the next thing in your book is example 1. Okay, and so that's what I'll be going through next. So example 1 here asks us to use this figure to name each of the following. So the first one says a line containing point A. Okay, so here is point A, and a line containing it is right here. This line contains or has point A. Okay, so there's several ways to write it. Because I'm gonna write a bunch of different names, I'm not gonna write the word line. Instead, I'm gonna use the symbol for line, which is this. Okay, and then in order to name a line, you just name 2 points on it. So I can do something like line AB. Okay, I can switch up the order and name it line BA, right? Or I can do line AC, right? 2 points on the line. Or I could do reverse order, line CA, okay? Or here, if you look, there's a curly script. It's an L, okay? We can also call it line, and then in cursive script, line L. Okay, and there's so many more you can name it as. Here in the book, in their example 1, they literally named all possible names for this line. Okay, note they even wrote something like line BC, right? So even though A wasn't in the name, right, line BC, because it goes on forever, lines go on forever, it will contain line A eventually, right? So BC's here. But then since it's a line, it'll keep going and then I'll hit A, right? And so then you see CB, BD, DB, right? And so these are all other possible names for this exact same line, okay? In your homework, I do not expect you to name all possible names for it. If you can just name 1 or 2, that is absolutely fine. Okay. The next one is a plane containing point C, okay? So one way we can name a plane is by its cursive script capital letter. So here you'll see a cursive N. Okay, it's not a point, it's the name of the plane. So we can say plane N, right? Because we just want a plane that's containing point C, right? And so here I have a plane containing, here's point C, right? And this is the plane containing it, okay? So one way to call it is based on that cursive script. Oh, I should have written it in cursive. Yeah, plane N, right? Or you can name a plane by 3 points on the plane, but they cannot be on the same line. So you cannot call this plane ABC because they are all on the same line. Instead, the only point that is labeled here that isn't on the line is E. So somewhere in your name for this, you're going to have to use E because the rest of them are all collinear. Okay, so something like ACE. Or you can switch the order if you want. You can do plane ECA, right? Or you can do something like plane CDE. Or you can do something like plane CBE. Okay? Or you can choose the exact same letters but switch it up. Okay, you just can't use 3 of the same points on the same 3 of the points on the same line, right? So here in your book, you'll see that they name a bunch of them. There's probably many others, especially as you switch up the order of them. Okay, so there's many different ones, right? So as you reorder it, you just have a different name, but it's all talking about that same plane here. Okay. I felt like the check your progress question was a little bit easy. So instead, I'm going to have you do the check your understanding questions, number 1 and 2. So what you're going to do is just do it and then enter your answer in online. Okay, so here are some possible answers. Again, you just needed to write 1 or 2 of them. Okay, so the first, and then if you get it correct, you can move on. Okay, but these are just some of the sample answers. So number 1 is a line containing point B. So here's point B. You probably want to use this line because it shows a picture of it, right? So one way to name this line is to call it point P, but note the P is cursive and it's lowercase. Okay. So either you name it with its lowercase script, if it's written beside it, or you name it with 2 points that are on the line, right? So if I want to use this line, the points on this line is C, F, and B, and I just picked 2 of them, right? So you can see I picked BF, I switched the order FB, I did CB, BC. I can even not include the letter B in it, but such as like FC or CF, I'm still naming that exact same line. Okay, so these are just some of the possibilities. If you named any that weren't part of my possibilities or weren't part of my answer key, I'll go in and check it later and then mark it correct if you did do a correct one. Okay. And then to a plane containing points D and C, I just put 3 examples here, but there's a lot more. Okay. So one way to call it is plane and then the capital script letter. So the capital script letter for this plane is R, so plane R. Okay. The other way you can do it is naming 3 points on this plane, on this kind of yellow sheet of paper, as long as they're not on the same line. Okay, so you cannot call it plane CFB because they're on the same line. That is not a valid name for it. Okay, you can also not call it plane EFD because again, those are on the same line. Okay, but you can pick any 2 points on this plane as long as they're not on the same line. So all of these points are on the same plane, so you can pick any of these 3 except for A. A is not on part of that plane. Okay. So next part, example 2, is to name the geometric shape modeled by the figure. Okay. So there's several things that are shown here. Okay. So here, where the pencil is pointing, it's modeling point A. So the pencil point models point A. Right. A looks a little weird. All right. So here, this pencil point models point A. Right. It's pointing here. Okay. What you can see is the edge of the paper here is modeling that line. Okay. So the edge of the paper models line, and then 2 ways to call it is line DB or line BD. Right? Right. The blue rule on the line, so right here, model lines BC, the blue rule or the blue line on the paper models line, and then there's many ways to call this line. I can call it BA, I can call it AB, I can do AC, CA, I could also call it BC, CB. They're all talking about the same line. Right. Okay. And then the last one, the sheet of paper as a whole models the plane. And this one I'm not going to name all the possible names. Sheet of paper models the plane. And again, to name a plane, you use 3 non-collinear points, so 3 points not on the same line. So I'm going to just call it plane DBC. DBC. They are not all 3 on the same line. Okay. But again, you could have called it DBA, you could have called it BCD, etc. So why don't you try the check your understanding. Again, check your understanding, not check your progress. Check your understanding question 3 and 4, and then come check the answer. Okay, for number 3, you should have gotten a line. The beam from a laser represents a line. And then number 4, a ceiling is a plane. It's a flat surface, right? And we can imagine it going forever. I know in reality a ceiling doesn't go on forever. And planes do, but a ceiling models a plane. Okay, next is example 3. So example 3 asks us to draw and label a figure for each relationship. Okay? So first, we're told that lines GH and JK intersect at L. Okay? And so we know that G is at -1, -3, H is at 2, 3, J is at -3, 2, and K is at 2, -3. So let's draw those points first. So G is at -1, -3. 1, 2, 3. Label it G. H is at 2, 3. It's a little bit harder because sometimes when you have your ruler, it's not perfectly straight. So it can be hard. So here's G. Here's H at 2, 3. Okay, J is at -3, 2. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, -3, 2. So here's J. And then K is at 2, -3. So 1, 2, 1, 2. A little bit hard to see with it. Okay. No, this is K. And then we know that lines GH, this line here, and JK, this line here, intersect at L. So then this point here would be L. Okay. Point M is coplanar with these points, okay, but not collinear. So that means it's on this coordinate plane, but it isn't on the same line as any of them. Okay, so not collinear. Okay, so basically what you want to do is you can just put M anywhere, just not on these lines. Okay, so the book just chose to give it a point at -4, 0. However, you could have still been correct and put M anywhere as long as it wasn't on this line. Okay. Okay. So now I'm gonna do the next one. Okay. So then the next one here says that line TU, this is line TU, lies in plane Q and contains point R. Okay. So first, I'm gonna draw my plane. So the way we draw a plane is just kind of like this parallelogram kind of looking thing, okay? And then I'm going to call it, it's called plane Q. And so normally when we call a plane, we do a cursive letter. So I'm going to try to make it as cursive-y as possible. So that's my plane Q. Okay. Then TU lies on this plane. So I'm going to just draw my line anywhere I want. I made it going this way. You can choose to make it going another way. That would still be correct. So here's my line TU. Okay. And then, so line TU lies in plane Q, and the line TU also contains point R. So all it means is R is somewhere on this line. So you can put it here, you can put it here, you can put it here. It really doesn't matter, but it should be on that line. So here, the fact that it contains point R. And so then here is my point R. There you go. Okay. So why don't you try number 3? This one is actually check your progress. So it comes right after the example, check your progress number 3. Draw your picture and then come check it. Okay, this is just a sample answer. What I would be looking for is that I should see a sheet of paper with 3 points on it, A, B, and C. And then I should see the line going through B and C. Okay, that's it. Yep. Okay, next is example 4. Okay. So example 4 just has us interpreting this drawing here. So here we want to see how many planes, how many flat surfaces do we see, how many flat surfaces appear in this figure. Okay. So here I'm going to count the green one here, right? That one's also where the base of this pyramid is, so that's 1. Okay. This here is the second. Okay. This surface here is the third. And then we can see this one here facing us is the fourth. Okay. So how many planes appear in this figure? 4 planes appear in this figure. Okay. And if you look at your book, it also names each of these 4 planes. But since it didn't ask us, I'm not going to do that. Okay. Okay. So the next one here asks us for name 3 points that are collinear. So I want to look for a line that has 3 points on it, and then I want to name that. Okay. So 3 points that are collinear. When I'm looking at this picture, the only one that I see drawn here that has 3 points is this line here. So I'm going to name that line. Oh, sorry, name those 3 points. So that's point D. So you can write out the word point, D. Point G, if you don't want to write it out, the abbreviation is PT, G, and then point B. Okay, so these 3 points are collinear because they are with each other on that line. Okay. The next question asks, are points G, A, B, and E coplanar? So let's find these 3 points. Okay, so point G is here, point A is here, point B is here, and point E is here. Are they coplanar? Are they with each other on this same flat surface? The answer is no. They are not coplanar. And the reason why is because even though most of them are on that green surface, right, E and B are, point G is not. They are not coplanar because point G is not on the same plane. Is not on the same plane as the others. Okay. And then last is, at what point do line EF and AB intersect? So we want to see where intersect, where they touch or cross each other. Okay. So line EF is here. Line AB is here. Okay. And technically, even though this looks like, oh, they'll intersect, this dotted part means that it's going through that green plane. Okay. And so what it actually means is these 2 points are not going to intersect. So line EF and AB, do not intersect. I know that sometimes it could be hard to visualize something 3D on a 2D picture, but if you think about it, EF essentially is going straight up and down, and then AB is lying across like this, right? And so here you can imagine that my pink highlighter and this black line will never intersect. Okay? And so that's kind of like what EF is and what AB is. They were never intersect. Okay? You're going to try out the last problem here. This one is check your progress 4. And then once you're done, come check your answer. Okay, the answer you should have gotten for number 4 is line BC or CB. Okay. It asks you to name the intersection of plane BCD and plane P, right? So if we imagine this pink part as plane P, right, it's your base, plane BC looks like this, okay, and then BC happens to be the points on the line, right? So it goes, plane BCD is BC, and then you can imagine D being up here or something, right? And so where it touches it is this line right here at plane BC. Okay? There you go. Okay, so that's it for today. You can get started on homework. Have a great rest of the day. Bye, guys.